When my sister and I were born is when my mom rededicated her life back to the Lord. And that's really when they started having trouble in their marriage, my mom and my dad. It was then they were unequally yoked, so to speak. He had always been an alcoholic, but it started escalating. The more we went to church, it seemed like the harder it was to be at home. He became physically abusive as well as emotionally abusive. And I remember being around my daughter's age, around 6 or 7, and we came home one night after church, and he was really drunk and really angry. And I remember my mom yelled, "Just go hide, go somewhere." And so my sister and I, we went upstairs, and I remember crawling into the back of a vanity into a cabinet. And I remember as a 7-year-old, I said, "God, if you're really real, Jesus, if you're really real, I want you to hold us and protect us and keep us safe." And I thought that my sister was actually putting her arms around me. But when I opened my eyes, what seemed like hours, but I know was really only a couple of minutes, she was on the other side of me. She wasn't physically holding me. And I knew then that God was real. I knew that even though what we were going through was so hard, that God had us in His hands and that He was real, and that there was a purpose for us going to church to serve this God who was real. We had a community surrounding us, loving us, and they always encouraged us to never give up praying for my dad. Never stop praying for his salvation. In the times that we did get him to church, we had so many people just love on him and tell him that they were praying for him and just showed him kindness. My mom picked us up early from school one day, and she said that our dad had gone to the hospital. And the doctors were saying he was in acute heart failure, congestive heart failure, that he had had multiple heart attacks. The doctors gave him a couple of days to live. And so we went to see my dad, and we're seeing him laying there. And I think for my sister and I both, it was just the thought that we would never see him again if he were to pass away, that he wouldn't go to heaven, that we wouldn't see him. So that night when we got home, we actually wrote him a letter expressing our love for him, that we know that all the things that he had done to us was not necessarily him. It was the alcohol, and it was the fact that he didn't have Jesus in his heart. The next day we went back to the hospital, and my dad looked different. He was laying in the hospital bed. The doctors told my mom that we don't know what happened, but he's making a complete turnaround in his health, and he's probably going to be discharged at the end of the week, but all we can say is that it was a miracle. So we go in to see my dad, and he's crying, and we didn't know, maybe he was just happy that he's doing better. He said that, "I read your letter," and I remember us being so fearful and so scared that, man, when he gets out of this hospital, it's not going to be good for us. He's going to be really upset that we even brought up church, that we even brought up Jesus. And but he was crying, and he said, "I gave my heart to the Lord." And to see the change in the man he is now, you know, when God says He will make you a new creation, He completely transformed my dad and gave us an opportunity to have a dad. He was always this real stubborn, hateful person, and then he would cry at the drop of a hat. He was so compassionate. He was involved in church. He was the head of the greeters committee. He served on the board of our church, and I'm so grateful that God gave us that second chance. The impact that the church had on our family, being there, being our family through all of it, and praying with us and supporting us and discipling my dad once he came to the saving knowledge of Christ, it was just amazing. So I'm very thankful for God's salvation and for God's love for us, and that God is real. And no matter what we go through, that we should support one another and truly be the church that Christ has called us to be.